I think, yeah, it's interesting with the smart home piece because it's quite a complex thing that you know, this is the first time I've built my own house and, you know, from scratch and trying to establish really what a smart home would do for me was really difficult. And I know that I probably spent 3 or 4 months looking around at what could the smart home give me and what was it going to give me, value for money wise, etc. But also who were the right people to do it for me, because you're entrusting, you know, quite a big part of your project with whoever took the job on, and you did everything from, you know, the standard wiring to, you know, the smart home element of it as well. So I know that when we came to meet you, it was very sort of last minute. We'd seen you on social media and all the stuff you did, and heard some really good things about you, seen some really good reviews. And you know, it's probably, you know, you've come a long way, I suppose, since then. You know, it was a little bit smaller than you are now. But we went over to your show in York, and I think what we got from it was transparency, where you laid it out to us, you know, what a smart home was and what each thing would do, which I think was really important, because there's so many components and it is so complex that you aren't really sure what you're getting with it. And because you don't have a smart home at the time, or I didn't have a smart home at the time, you don't really know what you're missing. So you see that these things can cost a little bit of money, but you don't know actually what benefit it would have. And I know, you know, speaking to Jess about it when we're sort of managing through the project, it was, this is going to be a good chunk of money for something that we don't really know we need. But then speaking to you, I think it brought it all to life. And I think what we had was a real confidence that a real large part of our project was going to be delivered, you know, in exactly the way we wanted it, and that nothing was going to be hidden. We weren't going to be disappointed at the end. I think we got the thing that, you know, A, you'd work really well on site with people around, and B, what we get at the end of it was exactly what we wanted, no matter what that took. And it wasn't going to be that, you know, you were almost looking to, you know, almost dupe us into you know, something that sort of sold us the dream, as you put it, didn't you? You know, some guys want to sell you the dream and give you something that, you know, is basic. And when you see all the videos of Control4, you see what it can do. That isn't always what people will sell you. They'll sell you the basic. So I think what we got was exactly what we wanted. And I think, you know, you know, it's one of the best decisions we made on the project was to go with you guys, because we have got everything we didn't know we needed. Yeah, so I think, you know, again, it goes back to, you know, you handed over the project to us, and you sort of have seen some bits, but you've really got to, you know, learn the system, and you've got to learn what works for you. It's a really individual thing, Control4, that's what I've found. So you don't know what works for you, the settings that works for you, the equipment that works for you. You don't know that until you've lived with it. And it even goes to the point where, you know, we've talked about seasons. You know, we have different settings for summer, autumn, winter. You know, it's all different, and until you know exactly what you want, it's really difficult. So I think when we first talked, you know, when we looked at the budget, etc., sensors and blinds were 2 of the things where we ramped down on sensors and we took out blinds completely, but we pre-wired for it all, which obviously now has come back, you know, is really a fruitful decision. But I think once you start to learn what Control4 can do, and you start to ask questions about it, you think, actually, do you know, if that just did that, that'd be, you know, how good. And it's a really small thing in the grand scheme of things, but it just makes a real difference. And you spend, you know, a lot of time in your home, and, you know, it makes your life a lot easier and a lot more comfortable and a lot more enjoyable. And I think that's what you don't know when you first start out. So, you know, the blinds thing was, actually, well, I need to put something in a window anyway, so I'm going to have to spend some money doing it. And why not do you know, why not have the best solution I can there? So, you know, we went with the blinds, and now I don't have to do anything with a blind. And it sounds a bit lazy really that you don't do it, but actually not having to go around umpteen windows and put down a blind is, it does make your life easier when you've got, a baby to feed, put to bed. You've got a real routine in the night. It's something you just don't have to think about. Yeah, I think that they're just a real feature to the house and just give a bit of interest to a room. And I'm not a person that, knows a ton about, design and etc. But, I know that, another thing when we spoke at the start, there were loads of things that you talked about that I wouldn't have thought of and that we did on the back of your recommendation. You said, I think that'd look really well in terms of, what you'd seen previously in your experience. And then you see what it ends up like and you go, it's absolutely the right thing to do, but you necessarily wouldn't have known it. And the fact that, it can create a bit of a wow factor, and you've got so much control over, colour, timings, settings, etc. on it. And, it really can just make a room. And, we're sat in at the moment, and chill. And, it's a really comfortable atmosphere that you're in. You just don't have that if you don't have the lighting setup that we've got, and the LEDs just make a real feature of the room and just make it really comfortable, I think. I think you probably could have paid for it elsewhere, separately, but I think what you brought was just a knowledge of what really works and what you've seen previously, and I think that's invaluable because even if we didn't go with it, you said, let's do it, let's pre-wire it, let's put something in, and if we want to do it in the future, we've got the option there. And actually on most of those things, we've gone and done it because we've, or most of the things we did it in the first place. And I think we collaborated a lot on this and you were on site a lot during it, for weeks and weeks on end. And, we talked through these things, didn't we, in each room, and your sort of counsel on that was, has ultimately given me a better outcome in my house. So, I think that was one of the things that really struck me when we talked at first, was all the things and all the ideas you gave me and all the things where I thought, I never thought of that, no one's ever said that to me. That was, that really struck me, and actually it's come to fruition now. We've a lot of those ideas we've implemented, or at least future-proofed our house for, and it's all worked out really well. So, I don't think I hadn't had those ideas put forward to me before in that level of detail anyway. And, the time you spent with me doing that, really was invaluable. I tell you what, it's the thing that when we were in the build stage that wowed everyone that came in. They just could not believe how many cables were run through. And how you actually made sense of it and how everything ran. And you're like a fish in a way, because you just remember you just remember exactly where everything goes. Even to the point now where you guys have just come and put a sensor in, and you know exactly where the cable is for that sensor that we pre-wired, what, a year ago? Yeah, more than a year ago. 18 months ago that you did that. So I think pre-wiring for everything is it just future-proofs you, and actually it allows you to be so flexible without, once you get into the home and you live in it, or once you work with it, if you're already in the home, you work with the Control4 features, it allows you to do that. But it was definitely a wow thing, and then we've pre-wired for an extension here as well, haven't you, that we may or may not do in the future.
Just literally ready to go.
And that bunch of cables was, it hardly fit through the.
Only just got it up between the joints.
Yeah. We only just got it up. We managed to get a bit of plasterboard underneath it, and that's how much wiring there was there. And that's another thing. The Dolby Atmos piece that you told me about to put in there. That extension could have everything in it, and that's just because I suppose we've had the conversation and we've thought about what every room could have in it, and seeing all the cabling run through. Yeah, is something that you just don't see. And even electricians that have been on site and seen it that haven't particularly had a great deal of smart home interaction are just astounded by how much actually goes into it. I think, I mean, you'll tell me the exacts, Rich, but it's probably another 5 cables for each one that you lay, type of thing. You know, and I think that sort of brings it to, I know we spoke at the start, you know, you started on site really quickly and did me a big favour with that, because we're at a place where I need to do it. But actually, when you saw the amount of work, and you guys working till 2 in the morning, and you know, well, overnight sometimes completely, just to get it in. But then you do see the amount of work that goes into it. It's not just a simple thing, and because there is so much, I think, complexity to it. You know, it's not just a plug socket. You know, that it's a ton of different things that you're doing. It takes a lot of thinking out, and you know, I think that's another thing that I think kudos to you guys, because you know, having that, you know, foresight to plan all that out is just unbelievable, really, because there is, you know, wires everywhere in this house to do what it needs to do, but it's a lot of work. No, I mean, you don't see anything. I mean, we've obviously got the video distribution, and so even any of that kit isn't out in the open. So in terms of wires in the house, unless I've plugged something into a socket, I've got nothing. And because everything's done so methodically, I know exactly where the wires run. I know exactly, you know, you know, you've done them exactly to spec, so I know exactly where everything is. So it's not, I mean, you wouldn't ever know. These walls hide everything, don't they? But it's all done really immaculately. I think, you know, everybody that looks at it, you know, it might seem easy to do it like that, but it'd be a lot easier to just whack it in, I suppose. So, you know, everything's really tidy, and then you just see, you know, you just see the rack and look at that, and you think, wow, it's something you can hardly get your mind around, but it just looks really professionally done. I honestly think you forget how you just get used to using it, and you forget what you used to do sometimes, and then when you think about it, you think, oh, I can't believe we used to do that. Like, can you live with it? Of course you can live with it. It's not like it's you know, it's unthinkable that I could go back to having 3-4 remote controls now. But does it make our lives so much easier? And yeah, absolutely. I can do everything from a remote. I control lighting, blinds, you know, audio, video, whatever it is. So, you know, yeah, absolutely. Best decision I've ever made. Honestly, if anybody asked me, and you could do it like this, you could, I'd steer so far away from it. I think that just being able to hand it to you and say, do the job lot, and then knowing the job you did of it, honestly, you know, I look back and I've probably made some decisions I'd rather not have done, but that was one of the best things I did, get you guys on to do this whole thing, because everything just worked hand in hand. You knew, you know, the right hand knew what the left hand were doing, and actually it worked really well. And you know, in terms of course, that's sort of invaluable, really. You know, you talk about sometimes a little bit of premium, but at the end of the day, for what we got with this project from you guys, I'd never not do that. I think that the thing was as well that, you know, when I was coming across electricians, it wasn't that I didn't trust them. It's just there were, you know, sort of, you know, without demeaning it, but sort of, you know, there's basically electricians that hadn't had any experience with smart homes, and that worried me a little bit. But if you absolutely trusted, you know, you to do the smart home piece, and obviously the electrics as well, so it wasn't even really a hard decision, because it's exactly what I wanted. And you know, like I say, one of the best things about the project that I did, because why wouldn't you? To be honest with you, I'll be really honest with you, I thought there'd be more problems than there were.
Right.
I honestly did. There's a lot of stuff that isn't quite right, because you say, you know, you've set it up with us, but until you've lived it, you don't know. But in terms of, I've honestly thought over these last however many months since we've actually lived in here, 10, 11 months, that there would be more go wrong, because you just think a lot of stuff can go wrong, but it really hasn't. And I'm really surprised at that. And yeah, we've had, a lot of messages here and there, and with yourself or Ollie or whoever. But you guys just been able to dial in and change things, and they're only really minor things a lot of the time. I know we had, a bit of a laggy Wi-Fi to start off with, didn't we, an internet connection. So once we got that sorted,
the incoming line was sorted. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was nothing to do with you guys. I mean, once we got that sorted, and I think you even came out one day to get me, to put a long cable up to the house up down the road, didn't you, to get me up and running again. But I've honestly been surprised it hasn't, not just saying that because I've told you that before, haven't I, that I thought there'd be more to it, because I have seen these things and I have seen them go wrong. I know you do a lot of work on houses that have umpteen problems out there. But the first 2 to 3 weeks are just a learning. You're just getting used to living with it. But once you do it, your mind just starts to go, and then you start to ask what can you do, and then you start to work out what it can do, and then you start to, your imagination starts to go with you, and that's when you start to really refine your experience to you. And I just think from then, you're just talking about odd little things that creep up that you don't imagine. And that's sort of the thing we talked about, the sensors, where we've said, as it's got darker earlier now, some things have started to become a little bit more, where you think,
changing timers on sensors and stuff. And
it gets darker a little bit quicker in the winter, so you might want your blinds to go down a little bit sooner than they do, past sunset, and stuff like that is so clever. But I know it can do it now, and I'm thinking about it. So even if that's just a 5-minute difference, and you guys aren't, you aren't fussy in any way about us getting a hold of you. Drop you a message, and in minutes most of the time it's done. And we've got the thing we want, and that's how you work. And that's another thing that I think really you've got to really trust in this process, is you are very much not at the mercy of you guys, but you're the guys that have the know-how and the equipment, and to make this the best home that it can be for us, and you've absolutely done that all the way along. Whereas, I can't imagine doing this and not having the right person that's going to support you, because after support is so, if you literally just left someone, you'd probably have a really bad experience with Control4 or any home automation, because it wouldn't be right, and it wouldn't feel right, and you wouldn't feel like you got your money's worth. But you've spent the time over months and months and months just refining this with us, and just talking about it, and speaking about different options, and in the end we've got there. We're doing a couple of bits more today, there may be a couple of bits more in the future, but we're really happy with where it's at now. So it's just a process of refinement, and obviously a lot of those refinements are in the first 2 to 4 weeks, but there's always little bits that come up. But you guys have always been there to
just deal with it.
Just deal with it, yeah, and that's what you do. There's no fuss or no hassle, it's just deal with it and get it right, Yeah, I mean, I think we spoke about that, once we got to know each other a little bit more and see how it worked. And, maybe in the early days, a lot of it was on you, but you can, these guys really know what they're doing now. Some of these guys have been with you a while, some of these guys have been in the industry a while, and, I can drop Ollie a text and ask him to do something, or give him a call, and it's literally minutes that I've got it done in. And that's so helpful, because you're doing other things now. You're not always on job. You've got your training centre and all those other parts. So it's how I suppose a business should run. You should have people with autonomy and skills and knowledge to be able to do it, and it doesn't always have to be you that I speak to. It doesn't always have to be, and it's great that you can rely on the other guys to do a great job, or to respond really quickly when you need it. So yeah, I mean, that's something that definitely has I wouldn't say improved, but it's definitely changed since the early days, when it was probably a smaller team and you were sort of the everything to it. You know,
or a lot of hats.
Yeah, you did, and we talked about that, didn't we, a few times, and said, I was always amazed by how you could just remember everything about every job, but you took so much on yourself. And now these guys are really, a massive part of who we deal with. I probably deal with them as much, if not more, than you, some of the time. So, but that's great, because I don't need you to do some of the things that they do. Yeah, Jess is probably one of the biggest converts to it, actually, because as I said earlier on, that when we were looking at this, she was like, how much? You know, what are we spending? You know, why do we need that? And then she's sort of right, but I'd you know, done a little bit of research into it, and you really do get, you know, I think there's something in this. And while we're building a house, why not? And so she had to trust me a little bit. You know, she was probably a bit tentative when we first did it. And then when we first got it, I think she was a bit afraid of almost what can you break and, you know, all that type of stuff. But she's she's one of its biggest fans now, and she uses it all the time without thinking about it. And it's a really simple system once you actually get to use it. It's really simple, anyone can use it. And you know, Jack's, well, it's just turned 9. And he's been able to use it from day one as well as anybody. He just, you know, absolutely, he changes his, you know, if he wants a night light on, he changes his LED colour to the light he fancies. He does his blinds, he can do anything in this house. He can change scene settings on the tablet. Really easy for him to pick up. And, you know, I think you almost think it's going to be something you're going to have to really learn that's almost going to make your life harder. It's completely the opposite. It just, you know, a push of a buttons where you used to do something before, you used to have to get up and do, you know, and anybody could use it. It really is easy. Yeah, I mean, they're all really clever features. The Xbox thing is another thing that, you know, Jack's friends come round and it's like a real like wow thing, isn't it? And again, like, you know, you talk about simplicity, you don't have to go to the Xbox tunnel or go to a controller tunnel. You literally press that, your Xbox comes on, you're ready to go. And like the LED in Jack's room it just looks fantastic, doesn't it? And you know, it almost becomes like a gaming environment, doesn't it?
Looks mega.
Yeah, and then, you know, that's one of the things we talked about, didn't we? You know, and you worked with a joiner on that, and sort of took it all out of my hands. It's just, you know, what do you think to this? Yeah, that sounds great, and it has been great. And all those functions that you can do with, you know, keypads, it almost feels like nothing. You know, nothing is impossible. Like, if you think it sort of can be done, and that's what we've found. I don't think there's anything where we've said can't really be done, that it's realistic, you know. That's a really, really difficult question. I think, to be honest, my favourite feature is probably, I'm having to wrap my brain because you can't be on that bit. Probably the sensor on the stairs, as silly as it sounds.
Sensor on the stairs?
Yeah, as silly as it sounds. Just having that and being able to, you know, tweak that to timings as well.
And light intensities, isn't it? Because it's
the
depending on the time of the day, depends on how bright the sensor comes on.
Yeah, and then you think about from there, the toilet lights come on low, don't they? You know, on a night for the, you know, if you were going to the toilet, etc. The downstairs light comes on low. So it's not just a simple sensor, but it does quite a few things. So it basically can predict where you're going throughout the house. And actually, what it does is keep everything really low. So when you get up in the middle of the night, or, you know, you come up the stairs on a night, you know, it doesn't startle you. So I think it just sort of embodies a little bit about what it can do. I think, yeah, you could go into loads of things. There's loads of great things about the system. I mean, the blinds, like I've said before, we took them out because they're quite expensive, but actually they are one of the best things we've done in the house. But, you know, you've got, sometimes if you couldn't, you've got to trade it off. I can understand why you wouldn't do them, but when you do have them, you think these are brilliant, you know. And you know, like I said, I don't have to worry about my blinds. I don't ever touch the blinds really, ever. They just come down and go up when I ask them to. And when I say when I ask them to, when they're programmed to, so I don't have to ask them by a control. And, you know, having even those controls where I don't have to root around for other remotes, and I don't, you know, I can do everything for it. I can go on, you know, you've put the settings in there, YouTube, Apple TV, you know, God, there's loads, Sky Cube Mini. You know, even having that, the ability to watch Sky, have 2 boxes but watch it on 4 TVs is, you know, probably saves you something in a way anyway. You only have to have 1 mini box, not 4, you know, in this house, because you rarely watch it on 4 TVs anyway, you know. So there's so many great features. It's really hard to say, but yeah, that's a cool one for me, because it really, you know, it saves you having to fumble about phone light switches, and you know, it comes on at both ends of the corridor and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really simple one, but a really cool one. Yeah, brilliant. That is one thing that I always knew I wanted. So whether I did smart home or not, I always knew I wanted that. But again, it's something that you guys can do as well as everything else that you do. And it makes a massive difference. It's, you know, the sound quality and what you get out of it, and just like the Wi-Fi, you know, you've got the subwoofer and the ability to, you know, vibrate the room almost through that, don't you? And then get some real good sound out of movies. It's just, you know, it's like I say, something I knew I always wanted, so it wasn't anything that was new, but I'm so happy with how it's come out in the end. And like you say, it's not intrusive. You actually can't see anything apart from, you know, even though speakers in the ceiling are very well hidden, and then you've got subwoofer behind the sofa, etc., and you can't actually see any equipment. So you get the experience without having stuff everywhere, which, you know, when you plug it in, you know, speakers around your room, etc., you know, it's quite visible, whereas this is invisible, but you get the same experience. Yeah, I think, I don't know what anything else could do, so it may be as good, it may not be, but from what I've had with you guys and Control4, it's absolutely everything that I wanted and more. I didn't know I wanted half of this stuff. I didn't know half of it would be useful, but it is. I think, you know, if you have any doubts about it, when it's done right, it works. I'd had doubts about that it work properly and all the time. You know, I said that before, but it does, it absolutely works. So you get the right guys to do it. It is a great system. It's a really great system with loads of great features. Probably not quite as expensive as some of the other systems you can use actually as well. So, you know, it's a real bonus, but I've not come across anything that it can't do that I want it to do. So yeah, I mean, it's another thing that you're looking at when you're first deciding what you actually want is what you know, system do I want to use, and you know, is quite a big decision. And yeah, I saw quite a few and landed on Control4. You know, one because of budget, but two because, you know, it was a well-rated system, and you know, now I've got it in. Yeah, absolutely, I'd recommend it to anyone. I honestly would not look any further than using it really.